Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift, our new show partner for 2022. If you're not aware, Zwift is the indoor cycling app that makes training fun with 9 different worlds based on real life and fantasy locations. I did Innsbruck, the World Championships course where Remco destroyed everyone in the junior road race back in the day. I did that yesterday. They got tons of workouts and training programs and a huge community to keep you company whilst you ride. In fact, this year Zwift will host the UCI Esports World Championships at the end of February. We've got some interviews lined up in advance of that and also act as the headline sponsor of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift to continue to level up women's cycling, which we already did the recap of that parcours announcement. Now moving on to the newly minted Women's World Tour team, but you wouldn't know that they weren't World Tour last year. Jumbo-Visma Women, led by Marianne Vos. Numerous wins, Benji. They won Gent-Wevelgem, Amstel Gold Race. Vos, for me, was the best one-day racer in the world. I think they had a pretty good season, not just because of Vos, Benji, but because Anna Henderson, Rihanna Marcus, they had other riders like Romy Kasper even starting to show something as well.
Yeah, quite certainly. Yes, 6 of the 7 World Tour wins are indeed Marianne Vos, but Marcus won that stage in the Tour of Norway, like you mentioned, and Henderson might not have won a World Tour race, but she was moving up and was being a pretty strong, supportive rider. And when I think back about Paris-Roubaix, the first Paris-Roubaix Femme, we had a lot of support there in the last, 50 kilometers, where in the group of Vos, she had 2 or 3 domestiques still being a pretty prominent rider there. Like Teuntje Beekhuis was pretty strong there. I think Romy Kasper as well. So those 2 riders top 20, I think, in that race, 17th and 18th. So that shows that it's not solely Marianne Vos. That shows that other riders are strong, but it does show that there's a bit of that she does deliver the biggest victories. And that's important for a team like this. But I do believe that their transfers for this season might change that a tiny bit. Do you think that, to start off with, that Marianne Vos is the greatest female cyclist of all time?
It's hard to argue with that. I mean, especially if you're including other races, like other sort of disciplines as well. She just won, spoiler alert, the Cyclocross World Championships in the US, although on a course that suited her. I'm not sure, Benji. I find it hard to compare across eras, but Vos' record is ridiculous, and I think her year last year, certainly after being in World Tour or being at the top for so long, was just another obscenely good year, particularly in one-day races. And a world champion, she should have been world champion, in my view. No knock to Balsamo. Her sprint was fantastic, beat Vos, but Balsamo shouldn't have been there. And I think Vos, second at Roubaix, second at Worlds, that was a tough little week for her. What do you think? Do you think she's the greatest of all time?
I think that when you combine all disciplines, it is a yes for me, quite certainly. There's one rider on the road in history of women's cycling that I'm like, okay, results-wise, it's pretty damn intense. It's Ginny Longo, where she had, I think, was it 9 world championships, 4 of which were time trial, 5 of which were road race. The problem is that's ages ago. She did her last race, I think, 5-6 years ago at the age of 57. A French ITT national championships and still top 15 that race, I think. I vaguely remember that at least. But she had a very long career. I think when it comes to only the results, not thinking about the competition in those races, the Palmarès is still a bit level between her and Vos. But that's a very different era. At that time, there was competition that was mostly non-professional. I think the entire peloton back then was non-professional. And with Marianne Vos, she's competing against professional riders. And that makes that, in my eyes, the level will likely be a bit more level than back in the day. And therefore, I would say that by the end of Marianne Vos' career, she's going to 100% be, whatever perspective you take, the most successful female cyclist ever.
I agree. And what's interesting is Jumbo-Visma have brought in a rider kind of similar to Vos, a rider that's won Tour of Flanders before, a rider that is fast at the end of a one-day race and is faster than most non-pure sprinters, Corinne Lebecki. who was on DSM, moved over, 29-year-old American. She had a bit of a disappointing year last year in terms of the results she's had before. She hasn't actually won at World Tour level since 2018 when she won the women's tour stage and I think the points jersey there, which would have been a sprint. And yeah, that Flanders was a while ago in 2017. Like, what do you think their motivation behind signing Lebecky is, Benji? Is it just more women's World Tour race days? We've said it multiple times now in the last couple of months. You need more finishers.
I think that indeed plays a big role. Yes, Vos is a fast rider at the end of a sprint, at the end of a stage with the sprint, and Lebecky is the same there. When it comes to a hilly uphill sprint, I'd put Vos a tiny bit above Rivera still, because I believe that Vos is pretty damn good at pretty uphill sprints, personally. Lebecky, I think next to being a rider that can also compete in the other races, like, for example, a Giro Feminine, I do think that with this team, you also put her with Marianne Vos in the Tour de France Femme. Because not only can Lebecky be a sprinter herself, but she can also fall into a domestique role and be a rider that is the lead out at the end of a race as well. Because we saw that at the Giro Femminile, Giro Don, in 2021, where she provided a lead out for her DSM teammate back in the day, which is the best sprinter in the world, Lorena Wies. And yeah, if she can also do that for Marianne Vos, depending on during the season who's the best of the two when it comes to flat sprints, because you
Vos.
kind of don't know it. Do you feel like it?
Vos.
I think it sometimes close. Okay.
Not Vos, ridiculous.
Okay.
I think this is maybe, I think you're onto something with the lead outs, Benji, because you just reminded me. What was the problem at La Course? Anna van der Breggen attacking and Vos had to close. And often Vos was having, when Vos had to close, she lost races. That was when she did lose races. Paris-Roubaix, she had closed, trying to close it herself. And at Amstel Gold Race, when Ashley Mullman kindly closed it for SD Works with Marianne Vos in the group, she just ruined everyone when they brought back Niewiadoma and co. So I think you have a point there. More numbers against the likes of SD Works, who have now Kopecky and multiple riders, and Norsgaard and Van Vleuten. You just need more good riders if you want to win these big races. And maybe Vos doesn't do the Giro Donna, Benji, and they send Lebecky as a sprint option. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's what's currently planned. I think she's not riding Tour de France Femme according to the schedule that's currently released,
really?
Marianne Vos, and to focus on the Tour de France Femme. That could be wrong eventually, because she can still announce to go in anyway. But what's based on the information that we have now, at least that I read, it's Tour de France Femme for Marianne Vos. So that indeed opens the area for other riders to take on that Giro Don. Now, obviously, women's teams aren't 30 riders, so they can't split up everybody. So they have to look at riders that are strong to ride both. And I feel like it's still possible that Vos will eventually ride the Giro Rosa, because she quite literally has won plenty of victories in that race before. And I'm thinking that she will likely want to do it again and perhaps want to expand that 30 victory list that she already has in that race, which is crazy. So I think that's a thing there. But when it comes to like an area that this team doesn't really have anyone, for me, it's GC for Tour de France Femme, for example. So I think there's a clear focus for me in those races in this squad compared to other squads that we spoke of before. We spoke of Trexie Alfredo. We also spoke of FDG and SD Works, with all three having a leader for the Tour de France Femme. This team does not really have that for me. And I think that's why I believe this team will be more working next to the sprints with Lebecky and Vos, also in the cobble races with Vos, but also in the breakaway with like Ariana Marquez. We saw that in Ladies Tour of Norway. Is that true?
She was good. I think Marcus, as you said, I think she's good enough climber to win a really sort of almost mountainous stage from the break, but obviously she cannot climb as well as some of the top climbers. And you're right, that's what seems to be missing here is that one rider who might be that rider, Benji. We don't know yet. She's 18, German. She's just joining the team, signed this year, Linda Riedman. She won the European Women's Junior Road Race I think in a sprint against Eleonora Chiobocco. She came third in the World Championships junior road race. That was, though, 50 seconds behind Zoe Beckstedt. But Zoe Beckstedt is pretty good. So there's no, like, she's like the most talented female junior just about. So she looks really good. I don't know, what she's developing into. Of course, I'm not going to say that Linda Riedman is going to go on podium the Tour de France Femme, but she looks like a talented rider, and maybe she'll be a GC prospect in the future.
Yeah, I do feel like when we compare this team, this Jumbo women's team, to the other teams I just mentioned earlier, this is a not as deep team. I feel like even with Canyon, I feel like we've got a deeper team in the riders that they have. There's a clear spear point here, and that is those two riders we mentioned already. And the others can be supportive. We said it already. Beekhuis and Koster were good. No, Kasper and Beekhuis were good at Roubaix. Koster is also pretty decent at cobbles and hills. Rides both most likely. And I think that's what I said earlier. Like, this team will be spread across hills and cobbles. Like, I think at least 5 of that squad will ride both. And that's, for example, that Beekhuis, Romy Kasper, and also Liana Marcus as a very supportive rider as well, because didn't she get like a 12th position at LBL or something? I vaguely remember that as well. So that's combining. But what do you expect of someone like Anna Henderson, who has been, honestly, growing quite well in the squad, but hasn't broken through on the top level yet?
Yeah, she won a few races last year. She won the Crez Elite Dam 2-2 race, not the biggest race, but she won 2 stages there, as well as the overall GC. Good time trials, won the British National Champs ITT. Interesting that she didn't do the women's tour, although that was the day after Paris-Roubaix, where she did come 28th. I think they might. She's only 23. Yeah, I think they might try and give her opportunities at like a Theratisit Challenge, Benji, to at least go for stages, and GC, third at Belwaza Ladies Tour. I think in some of those Belgian sort of flattish races, Healthy Aging Tour, she will be their GC leader there, because Vos
That's
cannot
Dutch.
do them all.
Healthy Aging Tour is Netherlands made. Come on, there's a difference.
The flat races with not so many hills in the north of Europe, she will be the leader.
Yes, that's a perfect suggestion there. Now, when it comes to like Amber Kraak and so forth, we haven't seen too much from her yet, but she got a top 25 at Ceratizit Vuelta Challenge, for example. I'm not sure if that will evolve into something better than that this season. So, yeah, it's kind of like there's proper, consistent support in the riders we already mentioned, like that Kasper Beekhuis and Henderson and Marcus. Those are the ones I'm looking forward to actually be there most of the races for Vos. But who of these riders makes it to the final group? And then I don't get to too many of these riders.
No, that you're right. They don't have the depth. Certainly not of an SD Works, etc. But that being said, in cycling, it's better to have the best rider and shirk a little bit on depth, because, okay, Jumbo had a better overall team than Pogacar in the 2022 Tour de France, but he still won anyway. Into some predictions now, Benji. We know Vos will do all of the big one days as leader, perhaps with other people having a freer role, and Lebecki will also have probably some leadership, but Vos will be the leader in the majority of big races. Do you think Vos will take the yellow jersey in the Tour after a stage? I don't think she's not going to win GC. Van Vleuten stays up. Do you think? I think after stage 2 or 3, I think Vos is taking it.
Well, there's that gravel stage. I'm not sure if that's 2 or 3. I think it's 3 or 4, one of those.
Yeah.
But that's an option to do something for Vos. But it depends on how hard the gravel is, because I haven't ridden that gravel section myself. Obviously, that's in France, but when I'm in Belgium, a lot of people think I rode every single cobble section in Belgium. I can say that I haven't done that, but I also haven't ridden the gravel sections in France, and therefore I can't tell you how hard those gravel sections are, but perhaps Madame Vos likes those gravel sections. Okay. Perhaps Madame Vos likes those gravel sections. Perhaps those are actually selective enough. I kind of feel like I don't feel like it's going to be selective enough for Vos to just ride away. And that's why I find it hard to believe that she will easily take yellow in the Tour de France Femme. I think that it's not happening.
I think AVV will bide her time knowing there's heavy mountains at the back end, and that might open up a sprint opportunity for Vos against a reduced group where she can take yellow by 2 to 4 seconds or something like that. That's obviously a big goal. And then there's also the one days for her. But yeah, they don't really have a GC option for the TDFF avec Zwift.
Yes, when it comes to the one-day races, though, like you mentioned, I think the blatant one for Vos is Roubaix. I think she wins Roubaix in 2022. I think she was the strongest rider next to Dignan, but I think the strongest rider still. I'm still going to say it. Vos was the strongest rider in Roubaix. And if she had more team support there, then she likely would have won that. But that's easy to say afterwards. Nonetheless, I think that they might not make the same mistake of letting someone go on the first cobble section this year, despite it being a very prominent and possible situation. Or perhaps Vos doesn't allow that to happen and says, first cobble section, goodbye, everybody, and does a Dignan. Because I still believe that's the most likely scenario that a Paris-Roubaix FUM will be won once again, because I thought it would happen this year and it happened, and I feel like it's likely to happen because like people want to get ahead of the drama and want to get ahead of the crashes, and getting away from a group is easier than being in the group in Roubaix and then crashing eventually and having to make your way back then. So yeah, I feel like Vos can win Roubaix and will win Roubaix this year.
The big question for me is Tour de France Femme happens. Annemiek will be the big favourite for it. She's Dutch. This is the last year of her contract with Movistar Jumbo-Visma, a Dutch team, I've just learnt. And you reminded me Netherlands is different to Belgium. They're a Dutch team. Do they, or should they, Benji, be putting in a big offer for Annemiek van Vleuten for even a 1-year deal? Because she's turning 40 this year, but she's still the best GC rider by far now that AVDB's retired, one would think, assuming she recovers from her crash fine. Do you think they should go after her? Presuming she's fine, I'd give AVV a 1 year on solid money.
Yeah, I don't know. Both could work out. I think it's something they need to think about. But I think they will indeed invest in someone to make their team deeper. But it's not only about getting the big guns, and I think it's also about getting a more deep domestique squad ready. And the question there is, are they going to continue focusing on Dutch riders or not?
And I wonder, maybe they take the bonuses they've saved the last couple of years. They didn't have to pay out on the men's side from not winning the Tour de France. Take those bonuses they saved and make a big splash in the women's team. I don't know. Could be a thing for Jumbo-Visma. But something to watch. Any hot takes, Benji? I think Vos wins Paris-Roubaix, RVV. I think she wins like 15 World Tour
Everything.
races. Yeah, I think she goes mental, seriously.
I think she wins Roubaix, but it's difficult. It's not a hot take, winning Roubaix. So yeah, that's kind of lame. But I think I kind of want Marcus to win, or Henderson to win a proper solid level World Tour race. But I don't know which one. Because the stage at the Tour de France Femme, a breakaway stage there, someone perhaps. Yeah, they're gonna win from the breakaway in the Tour de France Femme.
Agreed. I think Vos wins, as I said, Roubaix, Liège, Amstel, Flanders, 2 stages of the Tour de France Femme, 2 stages of Giro Rosa, and
OxyClean,
European champs, and maybe world champs.
Maybe.
So it'd be a pretty decent season.
It's not a hot take if you say maybe.
No, just maybe for the world champs. Maybe the world champs. For the others, that's just right down now. Don't even run the races. It's already done. We're on obviously
goal take, man, dude.
Big Marianne Vos stand over here. Okay, that was our Jumbo-Visma women's team preview. They've got a lot to be excited about. A lot hinges on Marianne Vos, of course, but she's the best, so they should be pretty excited. Hope you enjoyed this podcast, which was presented by our show partner, Zwift. Thanks to Zwift for supporting the podcast. If you want to check out Zwift or find out more, head to Zwift.com to start your free 7-day trial today. That is in the description down below, and we'll see you shortly.